Moving on to my 11th season in the league, finished the last season with 42 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and the Cardinals had the number one overall pick. They drafted a corner named Xavier Greenberry, and then at free safety, we drafted Dalton Manning with a 30th overall pick. 75 overall player, not bad, and the Cardinals got a steal with an 82 overall corner, going to be a generational corner. And the Cardinals, it seems like they're always in the top 5 for the draft picks, so even though they keep continuing to hit on these draft picks, they do not translate to wins. So now in week 1, we were playing against the Los Angeles Rams in LA, and we clearly wanted revenge for losing to them in the NFC Championship game. And then we also wanted to prove that we were title contenders because the Rams ended up winning the Super Bowl that season over the Bengals 20-7. So coming into this week 1 matchup, we felt we had to prove ourselves. And I found Joe Baldwin for an 80-yard touchdown pass to open up the game. And later, at the beginning of the third quarter on 3rd and 9, the game was still tied 7-7 when I ran outside the pocket, threw a questionable pass down the field that got intercepted. And it was basically an arm punt. We were going to end up punting the ball anyways, and they started from around the 40-yard line. So a little bit better positioning. But the Rams did end up making us pay. They scored a touchdown, and so they took a 14-7 lead. And then we are immediately trying to answer right back. And so we drove down to the red zone before I found Jaleel Jeffries for the touchdown in the back of the end zone. And we tied the game again. But at the beginning of the fourth quarter, the Rams got up another field goal. So down by 3. If we played this right, we would have the opportunity to get a walk-off touchdown. Or at worst case, as long as we get onto the Rams side of the field, get a field goal. So down by 3 points with 3 minutes remaining. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Now I rolled outside the pocket and I hit Trevor Knott getting down to the 2-yard line. And then on 1st and goal, tried to run it with Malik Dawson and he got just ran over. We had 7 carries at this point for 18 yards. So the running game wasn't working. And that led to me scrambling out to my right, trying to actually throw the ball for once instead of just running into the end zone. And the problem is I probably could have just ran it for the touchdown. But instead, I tried to make a play passing the ball, and Joe Baldwin stopped running his route because he was running against the back of the end zone. It gets picked off, and down by 3, we get lucky enough to have an opportunity to, again, tie the game or win it. With 5 seconds remaining, we tried to take a shot at the end zone, but we end up getting hit, which was good for us because it left enough time to at least kick the field goal to go to OT, where I eventually found Joe Baldwin on the sideline, perfectly getting us into field goal range. And the Rams started with the ball, but we ended up delivering a dagger touchdown pass the back left corner, scoring the game-winning touchdown. And Amari Huggins-Bruce has had a small impact ever since the emergence of Jaleel Jeffries, but he sealed the game-winning touchdown, getting open in double coverage with the safety helping over the top. It wasn't enough. Amari Huggins-Bruce has still got that speed, even if he is getting older. And we did not outplay Noah Fafita in this game, and Max Truman, who came over from Philadelphia, had a great game with about 120 rushing yards. And statistically, we probably should have lost this game, but we came back and we just grinded out a win in overtime. And then moving forward into our game against the Vikings. So Josh Allen moved over from the Buffalo Bills to the Vikings to basically finish out his career with this team, kind of like Brett Favre going over from the Packers to the Vikings. Now, the significance of this game in Week 18 is that we are actually directly competing with the Vikings for a playoff spot. So we do not have a guaranteed wildcard spot at this point. We have to win this game. But here in the second quarter, down 3-7, I hit Jaleel Jeffries. He holds onto the ball, but he goes out with an injury. So we're down a man at wide receiver. And overall, I was having a good game up to this point. 6 for 7 on completions. And we're just driving down the field. Again, there's no rush to score, only in the second quarter. We are just taking our time and moving the ball down the field. Again, finding Malik Dawson with my X Factor activated. Malik gets almost the first down pickup. Getting to a 2nd and 6, I do end up taking a sack, which is going to hurt us significantly, putting us into a 3rd and 16 with 40 seconds remaining. But I try to throw up a pass one-on-one on the outside. It gets knocked away. We settle for a field goal, so still down by 1 point. But then later on a run play, Joe Baldwin gets injured. And so now Joe Baldwin is injured indefinitely, and Jaleel Jeffries is still out at this point in the game. So we're really down at wide receiver. But the good news was that Joe Baldwin did come back eventually, and Amari Huggins-Bruce is still available, and we still have Daniel Stark, who's an underrated wide receiver on the team. And so later in the possession on 3rd and 10, we could not complete to Trevor Knott across the middle. So we end up settling for another field goal. And down by 1 with 5 minutes remaining in the game, Joe Baldwin beat his man one-on-one, which we don't usually see on the outside, just beating a defensive back with pure speed out of Joe Baldwin. He's more of a technical receiver. Later in that same drive, finding Amari Huggins-Bruce on 3rd down when we need him most to get us to 1st and goal, and then eventually sitting back in the pocket, finding Daniel Stark for the touchdown to give us a lead. And like I was was saying, Daniel Stark really beginning to emerge on this team as a valuable wide receiver, even though we have so much depth at the position. And then we end up deciding to go for 2 with the 15-10 lead, tried to secure a full touchdown lead. Now, I ended up audibling out of the I formation look with 2 running backs in the backfield, just trusting our receivers to win a one-on-one, and that's exactly what Amar Huggins-Bruce did, finding his way to the sideline, creating separation, holding on for that 2-point conversion, but the Vikings ended up answering, tying it 17-17, and on 3rd and 16, I rolled out to my left and delivered a dime for the first down pickup. With a minute and a half remaining, it was just down to trying to get the last second field goal to come out with a win. This is, again, a must-win game if we want to even make a wild card. So, standing back in the pocket, looking for my receivers to get open, I end up running up the middle and then making a throw, but unfortunately, my feet were across the line along with my arm as I made the throw, so it was an illegal forward pass, setting us back a little bit, and later it comes down to a 3rd and 8, and I make a one-on-one pass down the field, and my receiver holds onto it luckily, putting us in position for the field goal, and we end up getting the upset win, I would say, 20-17 over the Vikings. So that would theoretically move us onto the playoffs, but due to a technicality of strength of schedule, we finished with the same record as the Vikings. We finished with a 10-7 record, and the Rams won the division. So the Rams would be moving on to the playoffs once again after winning the Super Bowl last year. So even though we beat them in week 1, it would not be enough. And the Vikings, who had a identical record to us, ended up moving on to the playoffs while we missed the playoffs. And so it was a huge disappointment, obviously. And Malik Dawson had a solid season with 1,000 receiving yards. Joe Baldwin had a good season, 1,200. Amari Huggins-Bruce with 1,000. And Joe Baldwin also had 11 TDs, Trevor Knott having 10. And Jaleel Jeffries had a little bit of a down year after having 2 really good seasons. And then I ended up finishing 3rd for MVP with Justin Jupin, finishing with winning the MVP. I finished 3rd for best quarterback, although I did get the QB1 slot in the Pro Bowl. And then looking at halfback 2, Malik Dawson made halfback 2. Wide receiver, Joe Baldwin ended up making it wide receiver number 4. So we had a number of players on offense make it. Cameron Wilson, still on the Vikings, by the way. So I didn't see him in action, probably on the bench at this point, but he had 3.5 sacks over the course of the season. And he is still very much in the league, still a superstar X-Factor caliber player. And Marshawn Ford still on the Cowboys too. Been with the Cowboys his entire career, up to an 85 overall, still at an advanced age at tight end, still having some sort of contribution. And it ends up being the Texans and the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl, and the Texans win the Super Bowl with Jonathan Stewart getting Super Bowl MVP. So now the Buccaneers have been to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row and have not won it either time. Now, normally we save retirements for the beginning of an episode, but this time, Aiden Hutchinson, J.J. Malone, and a number of key players end up retiring, like Jalen Hurts, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and then moving down the line further, we have Marshawn Ford, who ends up retiring, along with Joe Burrow. So some of our, older teammates end up retiring. Marshawn Ford, he ends up calling it a career, and we will leave that for next episode when we talk more about Marshawn Ford's impact on my individual career.